In 1953, Frito-Lay spent $250,000 on a television advertising campaign for a product that had existed in American kitchens since before the Civil War. The product was the potato chip. The advertising campaign was not about the chip, it was about the bag. Before that campaign, most American families made their own snacks from whatever was in the kitchen. Crackers from flour and water, dried fruit from the summer harvest, roasted nuts from the fall, popcorn from the corn that was already in the house. None of it came in a bag with a brand name on it, and none of it cost $5 for 3 ounces. My name is Peter Harnish, and what you are about to see are 20 snacks that families made from scratch before the snack food industry convinced them they couldn't, that grocery store bags still cannot match on taste, on ingredients, or on cost. Number 11 was sold in American candy stores for 2 cents a piece in the 1890s and has not been commercially available for 60 years, despite being the most requested item whenever historians ask elderly Americans about the foods of their childhood. Number 1 is the snack that fed working families across 3 continents for over 2,000 years and costs under 50 cents a pound to make today. Subscribe before we start, because the snack food industry has a $500 billion annual reason for you to forget what your great-grandmother already knew. Number 20. Crackers from flour and water. A commercial box of crackers contains flour, oil, salt, and in most cases, a list of additives, preservatives, and flavor enhancers that runs to 15 or 20 ingredients. The base cracker, stripped of those additions, is flour, water, salt, and fat. 4 ingredients. 20 minutes of preparation. The hardtack cracker, made from flour, water, and salt, baked until completely dry, has been documented as a food staple in military rations, sailor provisioning, and frontier household cooking since at least the 17th century. The American Civil War hardtack, documented in the diaries and letters of soldiers on both sides, was identical in composition to the sailor's biscuit that provisioned the ships of the British Navy a century earlier. The modern version, made with a small amount of oil added to the flour and water for a less austere texture, produces a cracker that is nutritionally superior to most commercial crackers because it contains no hydrogenated oils, no preservatives, and no flavor enhancers. The ingredients are flour, water, oil, and salt. A box of commercial crackers costs $3 to $5 for about 200 grams. A pound of flour costs under $1 and makes significantly more crackers than a commercial box, from better ingredients, in 20 minutes of hands-on time. Number 19. Roasted chickpeas. Chickpeas roasted in a cast-iron pan with salt and a small amount of oil are crunchy, filling, high in protein, and keep for several days in a sealed container. They have been eaten as a street snack across the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and South Asia for over 3,000 years. The roasted chickpea, called leblebi in Turkey, chana in India, and sessi tostati in Italy, appears in the street food records of ancient Rome, in medieval Arabic cookbooks, and in the household records of every culture that grew legumes in a climate warm enough to dry them. In the American context, roasted chickpeas appear in the household management guides of the late 19th and early 20th century as a standard pantry snack, made from dried chickpeas that were soaked, boiled, and then roasted in a dry pan or oven. The result is a snack with approximately 15 grams of protein per cup, more than most commercial protein snacks, and a cost of under 50 cents per cup at dried chickpea prices. A bag of commercially roasted chickpeas costs $4 to $6 for 5 ounces. A pound of dried chickpeas costs $1.50 to $2 and produces several times that amount of finished snack after soaking and roasting. Number 18. Dried apple rings. Apples sliced thin, treated with lemon juice to prevent browning, and dried in the sun or a low oven until leathery, have been a staple snack in apple-growing regions of America and Europe since the first apple orchards were established in the New World in the early 17th century. The practice of drying apple rings for winter storage and snacking is documented in colonial American household records, in Shaker community food preservation guides, and in the Agricultural Extension Service bulletins of the late 19th century. The Shaker communities of New England, documented by food historian Amy Bess Miller in her 1970 study, The Shaker Way, maintained apple drying as a primary preservation activity every autumn, producing enough dried apple to last through the following spring. The dried apple ring contains all the fiber and most of the vitamins of the fresh apple, concentrated into a smaller, portable form. It keeps for months without refrigeration when fully dried. It requires no packaging, no preservatives, and no equipment more sophisticated than a low oven or a sunny day with a wire rack. A bag of commercial dried apple rings costs $5 to $8 for 6 ounces. A pound of fresh apples costs $1 to $2 and produces approximately 2 to 3 ounces of dried rings per pound, making the homemade version cost equivalent when made in quantity and significantly superior in flavor because no commercial drying operation uses apples at peak ripeness. Number 17. Popcorn from loose kernels. Microwave popcorn was introduced commercially in 1981. Before that, every American household that ate popcorn popped it in a pan or a dedicated popper from loose kernels. The loose kernel was cheaper, produced more popcorn per dollar, contained no artificial flavoring or hydrogenated oil, and could be seasoned any way the household preferred. Loose popcorn kernels have been a documented American snack food since at least the 1820s, when street vendors in northeastern cities sold popcorn from mobile carts as a common working-class snack. The practice of popping corn over an open fire predates this by several centuries, documented in the records of European contact with indigenous North American peoples who had been popping corn for at least 1,000 years before European arrival. A bag of loose popcorn kernels costs $2 to $3 per pound and produces approximately 32 cups of popped corn. A box of microwave popcorn contains 3 bags of approximately 4 cups each and costs $3 to $5. The loose kernel produces 8 times more popcorn per dollar, contains none of the additives in microwave popcorn, and can be popped in a pot with a lid and a tablespoon of oil in under 5 minutes. Number 16. Sunflower seeds roasted in shell. Sunflower seeds roasted in their shells with salt water and dried in the oven are one of the most cost-effective and nutritionally dense snacks available. A quarter cup of sunflower seeds contains approximately 200 calories, 7 grams of protein, and significant quantities of vitamin E, selenium, and magnesium. The practice of eating roasted sunflower seeds is documented in the indigenous cultures of North America, where the sunflower was cultivated as a food crop for over 5,000 years before European contact. The Hidatsa and Mandan peoples of the Northern Plains are specifically documented by ethnobotanist Melvin Gilmore in his 1919 study Uses of Plants by the Indians of the Missouri River region as roasting sunflower seeds in their shells as a standard food preparation method. To make them, soak sunflower seeds in heavily salted water overnight. Drain and spread on a baking sheet. Roast at 300 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 to 40 minutes, stirring occasionally, until the shells are dry and crisp. A bag of commercial roasted sunflower seeds costs $3 to $5 for 5 ounces. A pound of raw sunflower seeds in shell costs $1 to $2 and produces more finished product than any commercial bag. Number 15. Homemade peanut butter. Peanut butter as a commercial product was patented in 1895 by John Harvey Kellogg, who developed it as a protein food for patients at his sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan, who could not chew solid food. Before Kellogg's patent, peanuts had been ground into paste and eaten across South America, West Africa, and the American South for centuries. Homemade peanut butter, made by roasting raw peanuts and grinding them in a food processor or mortar until the oils release and the paste smooths, contains one ingredient: peanuts. Commercial peanut butter contains peanuts, hydrogenated vegetable oil to prevent separation, sugar, and salt, and in many cases additional stabilizers. The homemade version separates when stored at room temperature, which is what peanut butter is supposed to do, because separation is what happens when a natural oil is not hydrogenated. Stir it before use. The flavor is significantly more intense than commercial peanut butter because no flavor is lost to processing and no competing sweetness is added. A jar of commercial peanut butter costs $3 to $5 for 16 ounces. A pound of raw peanuts costs $1.50 to $2.50 and produces approximately the same volume of finished peanut butter with one ingredient instead of 5. Number 14. Salt and vinegar kale chips. Kale chips, made by tearing kale leaves into pieces, tossing with a small amount of oil, salt, and vinegar, and baking at low temperature until crisp, have been sold in commercial form since approximately 2010 at prices of $5 to $8 per 2-ounce bag. The commercial version is identical in composition and method to what home cooks have made since kale became widely available as a garden vegetable. Kale has been a staple vegetable in Northern European farming communities since at least the Middle Ages, where it was valued specifically because it overwinters in the garden and remains harvestable in conditions that kill most other vegetables. The practice of eating dried or crisped kale as a snack rather than a cooked vegetable is documented in Scottish and Irish agricultural household records from the 18th and 19th centuries. Bake at 275 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 to 25 minutes until crisp. The leaves burn quickly above 300 degrees. Watch them. A bag of commercial kale chips costs $5 to $8 for 2 ounces. A bunch of kale costs $1.50 to $2.50 and produces several times that weight in finished chips, from 1 or 2 ingredients instead of the 12 to 15 that most commercial kale chip brands use. Number 13. Hard-boiled eggs with salt. The hard-boiled egg with salt is documented as a working-class snack and meal component across every culture that kept domesticated chickens. It appears in the lunch pails of factory workers in the early 20th century, in the packed lunches of railroad workers, in the food supplies of soldiers on every side of every conflict in recorded history, and in the provisions of every explorer and traveler who needed portable food that required no preparation. It is not a recipe. It is an egg, boiled for 10 to 12 minutes, cooled, and eaten with a pinch of salt. The protein content is approximately 6 grams per egg. The cost is under 25 cents per egg at standard grocery prices, under 15 cents per egg if you keep chickens. The reason it belongs on this list is not because it is complicated. It is because the snack food industry has spent decades convincing people that a snack needs to come in a package with a brand name on it, made in a facility, containing ingredients they cannot pronounce, to be a valid snack. The hard-boiled egg with salt predates every one of those companies by several thousand years and outperforms their products on protein, cost, and ingredients. A hard-boiled egg and a pinch of salt costs under 25 cents. A commercial protein snack containing equivalent protein costs $2 to $4. Number 12. Molasses candy. Before the candy bar, before the chocolate truffle, before any of the commercial confections that now fill an entire aisle of every grocery store, working-class American families made candy from the one sweetener that was widely available and affordable: molasses. Molasses candy, made by boiling molasses to the hard crack stage and pouring it onto a greased surface to cool and harden, was a standard household confection documented in American household management guides from the colonial period through the early 20th century. The taffy pull, a social activity documented in American rural community records where families pulled hot molasses candy together until it lightened in color and developed a chewy texture, was a standard form of household entertainment in communities where commercial entertainment did not exist. Molasses is the byproduct of sugar refining, available in most grocery stores for $3 to $5 per bottle, and one bottle makes considerably more candy than any commercial confection of equivalent weight costs. The flavor of molasses candy is more complex and less sweet than modern commercial candy because it is made from unrefined sugar compounds rather than refined white sugar with flavoring added. It was the flavor that American families grew up with before the candy industry standardized taste around refined sweetness. Number 11. Penny Candy Horehound Drops. Horehound Drops were the most widely sold penny candy in American general stores from the 1850s through the early 20th century. A survey of general store inventory records from that period, examined by food historian Andrew Smith in his 2007 Encyclopedia of Junk Food and Fast Food, identifies Horehound Drops as the single most commonly stocked confection in American general stores of the period, appearing in records from Maine to California. The commercial production of Horehound Drops stopped in the mid-20th century as candy industry consolidation reduced product variety and consumer tastes shifted toward chocolate. The candy has not been widely commercially available for 60 years. When historians ask elderly Americans about the foods of their childhood, Horehound drops are among the most frequently mentioned. Horehound drops are made by brewing a strong tea from dried horehound herb, straining it, combining the liquid with sugar, and boiling to the hard crack stage before pouring into molds or onto a greased surface. The flavor is intensely herbal and bittersweet, unlike any modern commercial candy. Dried horehound is available from herb suppliers for $5 to $10 per ounce. 1 ounce makes considerably more candy than any commercial candy bag of equivalent cost. Number 10. Fried bread scraps. In every culture that baked bread, the scraps of leftover dough that resulted from shaping loaves were fried in whatever fat was available, and eaten as a snack or a side dish. The Navajo call it fry bread. Scottish families called it dough balls. In Italy it is called crescentine. In Poland it is called rakuchi. The name changes. The recipe is flour, water, salt, fat, and fire. The practice is documented in the households of virtually every agricultural culture that grew grain, because bread was the primary food and the scraps of dough that did not make it into the loaf were not wasted. A family that baked bread twice a week had leftover dough twice a week and fried bread scraps twice a week. The cost is zero beyond the flour and fat already used for bread baking. The scraps are the byproduct of a process already underway. A commercial fried dough product at a fair or a grocery store costs $3 to $6 for a small portion. The household version is made from the residue of bread production that would otherwise be discarded. Number 9. Roasted pumpkin seeds. Every pumpkin that is cut open for cooking or for decoration contains seeds that are edible, nutritious, and excellent when roasted. In American households before the mid-20th century, pumpkin seeds were routinely saved, washed, salted, and roasted as a snack from the same pumpkins that provided the flesh for pie and soup. The practice is documented in Shaker household records, in the agricultural journals of New England farming communities in the 19th century, and in the indigenous food traditions of the Americas, where pumpkin seeds had been eaten as a food source for over 7,000 years before European contact. The Aztec Empire maintained pumpkin seed production as an agricultural priority, documented in Spanish colonial records from the 16th century. Rinse the seeds clean of pumpkin flesh, dry them on a towel, toss with oil and salt, spread on a baking sheet. Roast at 300 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 to 30 minutes until golden. A bag of commercial pepitas costs $5 to $8 for 8 ounces. A pumpkin bought for $2 to $4 contains enough seeds to produce a comparable amount of finished roasted snack from seeds that were going to be discarded. Number 8. Bone broth crackers. The crackling that forms on the surface of rendered fat and in the bottom of a pan used for roasting meat is not waste. It is concentrated protein and fat that has been intensified by heat and is fully cooked. In the farm households of America and Europe, crackling was saved and eaten as a snack, used as a flavoring for bread dough or mixed into cornbread. American households of the 19th and early 20th century that raised their own pigs documented crackling production as a byproduct of the annual hog butchering, preserved in salt or rendered lard and eaten through the winter months. Southern cooking traditions specifically preserved the knowledge of crackling preparation after the Depression-era period, when no part of any animal was wasted. The commercial equivalent is the pork rind, sold in bags at $3 to $5 for 3 ounces, produced from the skin of commercially raised pigs at industrial scale. The household crackling is produced from whatever fat and skin remains after the primary meat has been used, at no additional cost beyond the animal already being prepared. Number 7. Vinegar candy. Vinegar candy, made by boiling white vinegar and sugar to the hard crack stage and pulling until opaque, was a standard household confection in American rural communities in the 19th century. It appears in household management guides of the period under several names, including vinegar taffy and acid drops, and was recommended as a cough remedy as well as a confection because the acid content soothed throat irritation. The commercial equivalent is the sour candy category, which generated $1.2 billion in sales in the United States in 2023, according to the National Confectioners Association. The active ingredient in commercial sour candy is citric acid or tartaric acid, added to sugar candy to produce tartness. Vinegar candy achieves the same effect through the acetic acid in white vinegar. To make it, combine 1 cup white vinegar with 2 cups sugar in a heavy pan. Cook to 300 degrees Fahrenheit without stirring. Pour onto a greased surface. Pull until opaque when cool enough to handle. Cut into pieces with scissors. A bag of commercial sour candy costs $3 to $5 for 5 ounces. Vinegar candy costs under $1 in ingredients for a comparable amount. Number 6. Dried meat jerky. Jerky is one of the oldest preserved foods in human history. Archaeological evidence of dried meat has been found at sites in the Americas dating to over 4,000 years ago. The word jerky comes from the Quechua word charqui, the name given to dried llama meat by the indigenous peoples of the Andes. In North America, pemmican and dried meat strips were primary food sources for indigenous peoples, fur traders, and frontier settlers. The practice of slicing meat thin, salting it, and drying it in the sun or over a low fire was documented in every culture that hunted or raised animals in a climate warm and dry enough to support outdoor drying. The commercial jerky industry sells dried meat at $8 to $15 per 3-ounce bag, making it one of the most expensive snack foods per unit weight in any grocery store. The production cost is meat, salt, and heat. The markup reflects packaging, distribution, and brand advertising. Homemade jerky made from lean beef, sliced thin against the grain, marinated in soy sauce, salt, and pepper, and dried in an oven at 170 degrees Fahrenheit for 4 to 6 hours, costs approximately $3 to $5 per pound of finished product, depending on the cut of meat used. Number 5. Oat and honey bars. Before the commercial granola bar, before the protein bar, before any of the packaged bar products that now fill the snack aisle, families who needed portable, calorie-dense food that did not require refrigeration and could be eaten on the move made oat bars from rolled oats, honey, and whatever additions were available. The practice is documented in the packed lunches of American factory workers in the early 20th century, in the provisioning records of hiking and mountaineering expeditions from the same period, and in the household guides of communities where long days of physical labor were the norm. The basic formula: 2 cups rolled oats, half a cup honey, a quarter cup peanut butter or fat, toasted together in a pan and pressed into a pan to cool. What you add beyond that depends on what is in the house: dried fruit, nuts, chocolate if available, seeds. A commercial granola bar costs $1 to $3 per bar. A batch of homemade oat bars using this formula costs under $3 total and produces 12 to 16 bars depending on how they are cut. Number 4. Salted roasted corn. Corn roasted directly in coals, or dried corn kernels dry roasted in a cast iron pan with salt, is one of the oldest snack foods in the Americas. Parched corn, as the dry roasted version was called, was a primary travel food of indigenous North American peoples for centuries, documented in the ethnographic and historical literature of every region of the continent where corn was grown. The Haudenosaunee, the Cherokee, and the peoples of the Southwest all maintained parched corn as a portable, shelf-stable food that required no cooking to eat and no refrigeration to store. A handful of parched corn could sustain a person through a day of travel without any other food. The Lewis and Clark expedition documented eating parched corn provided by indigenous communities as a primary food source during portions of their journey when other food was unavailable. Meriwether Lewis's journal entry from October 1804 describes the corn as compact, convenient, and sustaining. Dry roasted corn kernels from a bag of dried field corn cost under $1 per pound. A bag of commercial corn nuts costs $2 to $4 for 4 ounces. Number 3. Lard and molasses bread spread. Before peanut butter became universal, before commercial jam became affordable, and before margarine existed, the standard bread spread in working-class American and European households was lard or rendered fat, sweetened with molasses or treacle. The combination appears in the household management guides of the 19th century, in the packed lunches of factory workers documented in labor history accounts from the same period, and in the oral histories of Depression-era families collected by the Federal Writers Project in the 1930s, where it appears as a standard childhood food memory across multiple regions of the country. The flavor is savory and sweet simultaneously, in a way that no commercial spread replicates, because the combination of rendered fat and unrefined molasses produces a flavor profile that refined sugar and hydrogenated vegetable oil cannot match. Rendered lard costs $3 to $5 per pound. Molasses costs $3 to $5 per bottle. Both last for months. The spread costs under 10 cents per serving. The commercial equivalent, a jar of peanut butter or jam, costs $3 to $5 per jar. Number 2. Seed brittle. Before the peanut brittle that commercial candy manufacturers standardized in the late 19th century, brittle was made from whatever seeds or nuts were locally available. Sesame brittle is documented in Chinese culinary records, going back over 2,000 years. Sunflower seed brittle appears in the food traditions of the Plains peoples of North America. Pumpkin seed brittle is documented in pre-Columbian Mesoamerican food culture. The recipe is the same across all of them. Seeds, sugar, or molasses cooked to the hard crack stage, poured thin, and allowed to cool. The variation is what seeds go in and what sweetener is used. The technique is identical in every case because the technique is not the point. The point is the seeds, the heat, and the brittle. A bag of commercial brittle costs $5 to $10 for 8 ounces. A batch of seed brittle costs under $2 in ingredients and produces considerably more than any commercial bag. Number 1. Roasted grain. Before the snack food industry. Before the candy bar and the potato chip and the commercial cracker. Before any of it, the snack that working people ate when they needed something to get through the afternoon was roasted grain. Wheat, barley, corn, or chickpeas, dry roasted in a hot pan until they crackled and smelled of bread and earth. It has been documented in ancient Egypt, in the Roman military, in medieval European peasant communities, in the indigenous cultures of every continent that grew grain, and in the Depression-era households of rural America. It is not a recipe. It is grain in a pan over heat, with salt, stirred until done. The result is crunchy, dense, filling, and keeps for weeks in a sealed container. The Roman legionary carried a ration of roasted grain called frumentum as a standard provision. The Egyptian field worker ate roasted barley. The Afghan shepherd today carries roasted grain called kurut-e gandum on long journeys through the mountains. 2,000 years of human agriculture arrived at the same answer to the same question. What do you eat when you are working and you need something that travels, keeps, fills you up, and costs almost nothing? Grain in a pan. A bag of commercial-flavored crackers costs $3 to $5 for a few ounces, made from grain in a factory with 20 ingredients added. A pound of barley or wheat berries costs under $2 and makes a snack with one ingredient that has fed working people for longer than any company that sells you food has existed. If your family made any of the snacks on this list, put it in the comments. This archive is not finished.